All right, it's 7:02. I'll go ahead and get things started tonight. I want to welcome you guys. My name is Natalie Fritz, and I am the Archivist and Outreach Director for the Clark County Historical Society. And this is one of our virtual programs, which we try to do about monthly on different topics in local history. It highlights stuff from our collections and from our archives, so we get to share things that we have, and you guys get to share some of your stories and memories that are associated with them that add to the story. Each of these programs is always recorded. They're then available on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, and you can find them in Google. So if people are looking for things that pop up in these videos, that'll show up in a search. So we know that it's a good resource for people. So I'm hoping that this can become a bit of a resource of a little bit of restaurant history. And I want to thank Patty, one of our volunteers, who suggested that we do this topic. And I thought, oh yeah, we've got stuff on restaurants. I can put some stuff together. We've talked about them before. And then when I went back through the sheer volume of just restaurants that we have talked about on social media or Facebook or anything like that, I realized that we had quite a bit. And I said, well, I'll just go into our restaurant box and I'll scan some stuff from there. And I'll just add a little bit. We had over 100 folders just in the restaurant box. And as I kept thinking about different restaurants and things like that, I realized that the 100 folders that we have in our restaurant box doesn't even begin to touch the restaurants that exist, because then someone would mention a restaurant. I was like, oh, that's not in the presentation because we don't have anything in our collection that represents it. So as you might have seen in some of the marketing, we have a lot of stuff in our collection, but we don't have stuff that represents every restaurant that has existed or that exists now. So we rely on people to have those memories, share those memories with us. If you see something that you have something from an old restaurant and it wasn't mentioned, maybe we don't have anything about it. So we do have, I can share later the list of the box of what we have on the box. We need to update it a little bit. But there has been so many restaurants throughout Springfield and Clark County's history. So I'm not even attempting to touch them all. This is mostly going to be Springfield restaurants. So rest of the county was not really fully represented in that box either. So they might be represented in other parts of the county boxes, but not on our restaurant one. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer in case you see one that you're missing. Bring it up in the chat or bring it up in general. We can still talk about it. But this is one that I want you guys to jump in and share some of your own memories of these places. But I wanted to share first one of the best resources that I ran across a couple of years ago. It was actually, we had some people set up selling stuff out outside the Crable House a couple of summers ago, and somebody had this at their table for like $2. And a little bit less than it was originally listed at $2.95. And it was a restaurant guide from Springfield from 1987. And it had sketches of restaurants in them with their open hours and everything. And I said, I need that because I knew that researchers ask us for a lot of pictures of restaurants and things like that we do not have. And a lot of them were represented as sketches in this book. So it helped me to better picture some of these restaurants that I had never seen, because I usually preface these virtual programs with the fact that I am not a time traveler. A lot of these things are outside my memory, and I'm not even from here. So some of these restaurants that are chains, I know because they were up in the Northeast Ohio, Akron area where I'm from. But a lot of them I just know from the archives and from hearing people talk about them. So you'll see, if you see sketches on any of these slides, they're directly out of this book here, because that may be the only thing that we had representing a particular place. So I decided, couldn't figure out what order to put this in. Chronological was too complicated. Alphabetical sort of would work.
You're going to have to get that louder.
This is kind of in slides in random order for different restaurants to jog some memories for you guys and share some stories. But I thought I'd start with one that we had just recently in the paper as one of our where is it's. This is a thing that we do weekly where people can say what recognize people, places, and things around town. And just about everyone knew that this was O'Brien's when we put it up, even though we cut out the sign there. And yes,
I'm not, all I can see your face and I can see a list of people. That's all I've got. So I'm going to see if I can completely get out and start over again because I'm not seeing any slides. I'm not seeing anything.
Okay,
And
yeah, you might be on a different view. There might be a setting that you can change that says to see the screen view.
Let me see. Let's see if I can do anything here. No, that's not it.
But yeah, if you might have to get back out and get back in, I can.
Yeah, let me get out and then I'll come back. So, all right.
So, O'Brien's here had a long history, and I learned a little bit more from it from one of our former front desk volunteers and docents, Larry, who I believe is on this call, who told me more about O'Brien's because his parents owned it, and he had some materials that we didn't previously have in our archives, including some menus and pictures of his family, who also ran White Gables, which you'll see on another slide. But O'Brien's had a long history going back on that corner of College Avenue. It started out as a service station in 1929, and O'Brien's restaurant actually opened in 1941, and it was owned by two brothers, Walter and Charles O'Brien. And Walter died in 1950, and his brother continued on for a while until they sold it to the Millers, Larry's parents, in 1961, I believe. So what you see here is different ads throughout the years of promotional things that they were doing. Sounded like they had a great menu. And if any, I know a lot of people in the comments were sharing all of the different foods that they loved to get there, and how it changed over time. I know Larry shared some stories about the daytime crowd versus the nighttime college crowd, because you were by Wittenberg and had access to that the college crowd that would come in at night. But it later became O'Neill's for a short time because it was owned by Kevin O'Neill, and they had O'Neill's further up on Limestone, and then opened it as O'Neill's in that location. And it was also McMurray's. So when they had their fire about 10 years ago in 2013, it was McMurray's that was in that location still, that ended up moving into the funeral home next door. And I don't know if anybody on the call knows if they still have the pizza over there, Bob and Flossie. I know that was a place that you liked to go get pizza from McMurray's, so I'm not sure if that's one that is still active at this point. But going through newspapers.com is a really great source to find all the different big changes that happen in these restaurants. It shows, changes in ownership when they remodel, things like that. And I know that O'Brien's went through several remodeling stages throughout the years. And this next slide has Larry in it with some of the pictures that he gave to us to scan to have in the archives. And we have some of the original copies as well. But his parents originally owned White Gables, which there was a sandwich shop that was down by the Kroll Colliers that was frequented by people that worked there. And before Kroll Colliers closed, he made the decision to move further up town and bought a spot by the bank there, the Huntington Bank, up further up there, and turned it into it was the White Gables. Was it a drive-through at that point? I'm not sure, but you see the picture down here up on where it was on Fountain. And then picked a good time to get out of the downtown area before Kroll Colliers closed, because that was a lot of business for those downtown restaurants, and bought O'Brien's up in the early 60s up on College Avenue that we had just talked about. But it's great to have menus from the old restaurants to see the pricing. Pine for that pricing to be back around again, and things like that. We don't have a lot of those menus from the different places, so I'm always happy when we run across those. This is another one that was connected to White Gables. This was Charlie's Cafe, which opened in the early 1930s, right by Kroll Collier, and we have one of their menus on. And they were located on South Wittenberg, and then they were eventually taken over by the White Gables, which had the sandwich shop down there, and they managed it. Does anybody remember going to Cedar Street Beef and Liquor? out on the west end. It had, looks like, yeah, a steakhouse menu. So it was a fancy place.
Bob wanted to say
It's
something.
a good place to eat, Natalie.
Yeah, it sounded like it was pretty upscale.
It was.
I went back a bit further to figure out what it had been originally. It opened in the 60s as Cadell's Hideaway, and it became Colonial Hideaway in that location. And then it was Cedar Street from the 70s all the way up through 2000. And then I looked at Google Maps, and at some point the building was torn down, and there's a much smaller house there now. So I'm not sure exactly when it was torn down. But at one point, I think it may have been a strip club after it closed as a restaurant, because I found some of that in the early 2000s. So I don't think it was a restaurant anymore after that. So I think when it closed in 2000, Cedar Street, that was the end of its restaurant years.
Something.
Natalie,
Yeah.
Cedar Street Beef and Liquor, when they closed that, then Carl Young bought that and opened it. His son Blair, I think his name was, and Blair operated the restaurant for a short while, and I don't know why it closed, but it did.
And I know the Youngs also owned Stockdale's, and
right.
the Stock
That's
Bar
right.
too, I had seen. So, and it's the same Youngs that when you drive by Youngs, the tree farm says it's owned by Carl. So that must be the same
Yes,
line, at least,
yes.
of the family.
He passed away now, but he also bought the Red Barn that was down in the wedge there at Columbia and North, and his son Blair ran that. He was the Young family was involved in restaurants, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie, my dad helped plant those trees out at the tree farm for Carl after he
Oh
was
yeah,
banking.
I say, and Young's just had 130, 40 years. I can't remember. Fosse gave us their anniversary thing from earlier this year when they had their big anniversary out there. We were just out there this weekend. So yeah, that the whole family's been involved in restaurants and all of that for a long time. I think I had to take that Young slide out. I ran out of time and space for all of this. I have way too many slides to get through already, but we'll see how far we get. I threw one in here for one that's outside of everybody's memory, but you may have heard about it. You know, the arcade was there until the 80s downtown, but the Arcade Hotel had a restaurant when it first, around the time when it first opened, from 1883 until about 1918. And they had a very fancy menu. We have a really great quilt in our collection that has a silk menu from the grand opening in 1883 on it. So, so that was a neat thing that we have. And I know that they've seen other menus floating around out there from the arcade. Jumping back to one that's more recent, and I know that my husband's on here, and he frequented Bada Bing when it moved downtown just about every day of the week, because it was right across the street from his work, and it had good pizza and good garlic knots, and was a good cheap lunch to have. So probably was not great for us to both to be able to have access to that all the time. We ate a lot of pizza when they were downtown, but they were on Harding Road for a couple of years, and then they got the space downtown.
Yep.
So that was a great one of the first restaurants that coming back into downtown, as that we have a lot more today. So that was great to see. And now in their location, they have the Salado Deli and the La Torte Dolce bakery, which have the same owners. They also own Crust and Company, the pizza place over in Cohatch next door. So good to see some restaurants back in downtown and options for people. I want to do this one. Anyone guess what restaurant this is?
York Steakhouse
Uh-huh.
at the mall.
So I think this picture is its second location or second name.
Oh,
Because I couldn't find one of it as York.
oh crap. I forget it.
It was what it was at the end, towards the end before it closed. This is actually one that I've been to before it closed.
Yeah.
I got it on the next slide. Just a sec. It was Bradfield.
Bradfield's.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So York opened at the mall in 1973. So not too long after the mall opened, York Steakhouse was there. And then it became Bradfield's in 1993, and it closed in 2010. And Bradfield's actually had opened a second location at Sugar Isle Golf Course, which I'm not really sure where that is, because I assume that is not open anymore, because both of these are older ads from Bradfield's.
That's down in New Carlisle. Is the
Okay.
Yeah, New Carlisle.
Oh, I imagine that Bradfield's is probably still not there at that location. But yeah, I think we only went there once or twice before it closed, because we moved here in 2007. And it was a good place.
Mhm.
And I know there used to be lots of restaurants in the mall. Like they had Sit Down, the Blue Fox, and other options that were available at the mall.
Harvest House.
Harvest House.
I remember that. Mhm.
So this is a saga of a building. I decided to put this together as one building on Main Street has been a whole bunch of things. So this is some of the places that have been at 1706 East Main Street. This is the little building that is across from Los Mariachis now. So in the 70s, it was a nightclub, Kojak's Place.
Mhm.
And then it became another nightclub, Hiccups. And then Stan Hick, who owned Hiccups, owned Stan's Oyster Bar. And I found the article about that talked about that him and his wife went to Florida and visited all the oyster bars that they could get to get ideas for how to open one up here in Springfield, because they had this idea that they wanted to bring this to Springfield. So they had suppliers in Dayton so that they could get fresh seafood multiple days a week. And they were there for, from the late 80s through the mid 90s. And that's one of the ones that shows up in that 1987 promotional booklet. And then after that, it became a Chinese buffet for a short time. And then it became Los Mariachis and they were building or getting ready to move into their current location across the street while they were over there. And then in 2007, it was Artistic Sandwich and Pizza, which I vaguely remember because we were in town at that point. And then it was Sapori Grille for, I think, a very short time. And then I found, because these are all listed in our archives folders by name. And as I was pulling them out to scan them, I'm like, these all have the same address. You probably should note that these are the same address at some point. So these were different. There was Everyday Edibles was there for a little bit. There was Planet Presnell. I don't know if those lasted very long, but currently it's Mariana's, another Mexican place, but it has really good tacos and really good ice cream over there. I've been there across the street. We've actually gone to Los Mariachis for our main meal and across the street to Mariana's for ice cream and their desserts that they have over there too, because they're a very good place as well. So just across the street. So they've been there for almost 5 years now, or over 5 years now. So hopefully they'll be one that is able to stick around, which is good to say. It's good to support the local places and go to them so that they can stick around. This is one that was downtown for a long time, is the Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it opened as the Buckeye Lodge, which for a while was, you could go for lunch, but it had private membership in the evening for the upstairs bar and meals in the evening. But it closed as the Buckeye in 2022, and one of their employees, Chris Frosty, opened the upstairs and had events and food available up there. And then he ended up opening Frosty's, which is now the old Hayfleas Winery down the street from the old mall.
Mhm.
And they have, everybody talks about how great their food is. We haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but they have a big patio and lots of desserts and lots of specials. So that's a place that just opened up at the end of last year. So, and I think they opened officially at Hayfleas the end of this year. So
Hmm.
that's a good place to check out. This is another story of a building. It's been multiple things. This is over on South Yellow Springs. It was Daniel's Corner Q for quite a few years, and then reopened as the hamburger shop for a short while. And just this year, it reopened as a Mexican place that if you've been down South Yellow Springs anytime in the last several months, you know that it is torn up very much over by Fulton. We know because we have to go to our storage facility is down that street. So we know we have to take a detour usually. And the detour has very much affected this place that just opened this year. So they announced a couple weeks ago that they're closing temporarily until the construction finishes over there. So hopefully they're able to come back from that and continue their business over there. Does anyone remember Big Jim
Mhm.
Grabmeyer?
Big Jim Grabmeyer.
So
Mm.
he had a restaurant on College Avenue.
That
It
was formerly the Tuttle House.
The Tuttle House was there?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, uh-huh,
So
right.
was the Tuttle House connected to the? Well, no, because there was also the Huddle House was in town.
The
But I don't
what?
think it was.
The Tuttle House on College Avenue was operated by Pop and Whitey Bazell. And they also had the restaurant in the First National Bank building.
Oh, Whitey's?
Whitey.
Okay. I think that I have another slide that's got a few restaurants that were probably in the spot where Whitey's was then later. You've
I've got this bottle from Tuttle House.
Oh,
Ah,
That-
cute.
that's a keepsake.
That's really
That'll
cool,
be
Patty.
part of the museum someday.
I was gonna say, Patty, you're always bringing us stuff, so I guess we'll see that bottle soon.
Big Jim.
This is one. Does anyone remember the cellar that was in the basement of Rens? I know that we have this menu here in our collection, and I remember when we did the program about Rens a couple of years ago, and I interviewed Linda, I can't remember her last name now, but she was a buyer for Rens, and she talked about the cellar was where they had their like basement deals. Like they had it was like a clearance deal area. But when I found this, I was like, oh, the cellar was also a restaurant down in the basement there.
Was that Linda Peer?
Yes, that was, yeah. So I remember her talking about working down there in the discount area and doing the buying for that.
Well, it was always the tea room for the longest time, and then somewhere
So
along.
yeah, I'm not sure the dates on the cellar here. This ad is from the 70s that I found in the paper.
Room upstairs, not in the cellar.
No, it's on the cellar
Tea
basement.
room on. Brenda worked there, I know that.
Was the tea room in the basement?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
That's where they do rentals and stuff now
Yeah.
for weddings. This is down on the west end. I drive by this little decrepit looking motel every day and didn't realize that it used to be a very time restaurant. Park Terrace opened in 1959 in the Park Terrace hotel or motel down there. So it was that same building, and it changed names several times. It became Jack and Clue Charcoal Steakhouse. It became Annette's that had filet mignon and lobster tails for $2.50 in 1965. It was short-lived as a Chinese restaurant in the late 60s into the early 70s, and then they decided to go back to the original name, and it was Park Terrace again. By the 70s, but then it changed names for just a little bit. It was Hula Hands for about a year, and then it became went back to Park Terrace again, and then became Roland's for a little bit, and then became Mama Rennie's, and then it ended as a lot of restaurants do with the fire in 1979 when it was Mama Rennie's. But then it went back to being just a cocktail lounge, Park Terrace. So everything I found after that was that it was a cocktail lounge until like the early 2000s. So I don't think there's anything there now. This is I can't, Rest Inn, maybe, I think that it's called, right before you get up to the BP over there. Okay, here, let's play. What restaurant did this building used to be?
Taco Bell.
Yes. Do you guys remember when the Taco Bell came here?
It was probably in the 70s, 73, 70, 74 maybe.
No.
Because you could get a
Really
taco
had-
for a quarter.
It was 1968. So
Huh.
this is the announcement of the opening, and it opened not long after that. So it was Jim Lopez who owned Leanne's Dairy Delight. The Lopez's are still connected with that over on High Street. But I was going to play more of these. Guess what restaurant this building used to be? There's quite a few on East High Street. We realized as we were driving down. There's the place that used to be the Pizza Hut, and I love that those buildings are so recognizable as those buildings forever. So no matter what moves into them.
Don't forget Giannis's.
It's coming up, Bob.
Okay.
It's in here. We've got the barn, which is now Buckeye Barn Pizza over at Shrine in Upper Valley. They've got great pizza and sandwiches. They've got a giant pork loin. But they opened in 1994, and I know they just had a big loss this last week. One of their employees was killed in a car accident. So I know that they're closed at the end of this week, so that people can attend her services. But that's very sad for them. But another reason to support a local place to keep showing them.
They
that
also
support.
have the best French onion dip in town.
Do they?
Yes.
Like for Chip dip?
Yep.
Yeah.
I had everybody at the bank hooked on it. All my friends and my family down from Cincinnati want me to bring it at every get together.
From like the convenience store side, you can pick
From
it up.
the deli part of it.
Yeah. Good to know. Is it like Lawson's? Everybody talks about Lawson's as being the best.
And now I take this one over Lawson's, I think.
Yeah, that's good. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
The barn that you got up there,
Yeah,
it has a lot of history there.
it does. It's the
The
Snyder
barn,
family.
yeah, it's John and David Snyder's original barn. I don't know when it was built, but it had to be before 1900.
Well, because it's I don't know if it's the exact same barn. This is where I've got hung up on trying to figure out if it was rebuilt or anything like that. But that barn is in the 1870s atlas. It's sketched in the 1875 atlas.
They lived
so-
across the road in the big
Right. So
brick house.
that house across the street is the Snyder family home.
And then John and David's brother William lived in the White House south of the brick house.
Okay, and I think Christian lived at the one on the corner.
Could be.
With another brother.
A lot of history on that corner.
Yeah. Well, here's another one that's got a lot of history that I hear people talk about a lot. Elite Cafe.
Steak.
Excellent.
Which you see here, voted best steaks in town. That is what I always hear about it, was that they had the best steaks.
It would sizzle on my coat.
Well, this is one that I don't have any pictures of it in the collection, but we had this sketch. So that was the first time I could finally see it after hearing everybody talk about it all these years. But we have the sign. This is Casey's foot here by the sign, moving it with Ed Crayons over here. So that's the one. I had another picture that I think that showed the sign in it from an ad, but so I think this would have been the sign up in the corner there. If it was a blue sign that was up on the side of the building. But this is the location of next to the parking lot next to United Senior Services on that the Eagles side, I believe. And it opened back in 1936. So it lasted a long time, but again, it was another sad one that ended with a fire. had a big fire in October 2000 that it didn't recover from. And it was originally owned by Harry Lagos. So Jim Lagos' family was connected with that. And the Greek, I've mentioned a couple other, I have one coming up. There's a lot of Greek-owned restaurants that were throughout Springfield and downtown. This is one that we had to look up the other day because I'd always thought Bonanza and Ponderosa were the same thing, and they basically are, because they eventually Bonanza got bought out by Ponderosa. But I had thought that they were just kind of the same restaurant. But then when I saw this book in '87, I was like, no, they were separate and they existed at the same time here in Springfield. But they were later owned by the same company and kind of merged together into really just being mostly Ponderosa's existing. But Ponderosa was always my favorite growing up, because my parents liked to take us there because it was cheap to get us the buffet, and I would just beg for them to let me get a steak too. Say, no, you can get the buffet. So.
Well, Bonanza used to have the best cheesecake.
See, we didn't have Bonanzas by me when I was growing up. I think that we just had the Ponderosas left. The Bonanzas had been around a bit earlier.
When I was a Kissel, we'd go there for lunch. And you got in line and you hoped to get the last piece of cheesecake.
Well, that's another one of those places where I like to drive around towns and guess which one was the Ponderosa. And it's usually a Mexican restaurant, as it is in our town. It's now Cinco de Mayo over on Upper Valley, which is another great Mexican restaurant.
Definitely. And Bonanza's now the car dealership on Bechtel. Economy rental car. It's in the Bonanza building.
How far down? We're on.
It's across from AAA.
Enterprise,
yeah.
I still don't know where we are.
Okay.
Is there another
where Dairy Queen is?
Where Dairy Queen is? Oh yeah, so down that way.
About a block
so
up
like
the street.
Heading towards like the train tracks. Okay.
Right.
I did not know that. I will have to pay attention when I go home. But yeah, the Ponderosa on Upper Valley also was a short-lived Mediterranean restaurant. I got to check that one out once. It had pretty good food. Another steakhouse place was Western Sizzlin', which was on off of Derr Road on Vester. And I had to call my mom to find out if Western Sizzlin' and Sizzler were the same, because I knew she worked at Sizzler in the 70s, and I thought maybe they were the same place. And they were not. And apparently, I don't think there were Sizzlers around here. But she said there weren't Western Sizzlins up in Northeast Ohio, but I know that was a chain. So that was open from about 78 to 88. And then in 88, it became Michael's Steakhouse. And
then they became a Chinese place for a while after Michael.
I don't have that one on there. So yeah, it was a Chinese buffet. And it was an Italian place for a really short time, around 2009.
Michael's Steakhouse used to have a baked potato bar. You could go by and get a baked potato and fill it with everything under the sun.
That sounds awesome.
It sounds like all I did was eat, but no.
Well, today our tech guy, when I was working on this presentation, told me about Duff's Smorgasbord.
Yes.
And he said it was a Park Shopping Center. And he was trying to explain the spinning thing where the food was on, and I could not picture it. And now I heard that there's still smorgasbords that are around in the country, and I want to make it my goal to see one, because I'd never heard of this place before, and I'm amazed by how it works. But the place now on Vester is Casa del Sabor, which is another great Mexican place. They have cute little margarita flights that I really like, and they have a birria pizza that's delicious. So it's another good place to check out. And I guess they're celebrating 10 years this year if they opened in 2014. So this is now the Hume Hotel corner of Fountain and Columbia. But originally it was the Interurban Restaurant that opened in the early 1900s, and it was owned by John and Julia Hume. And as they expanded, they moved into a little place off the alley while they built the Hume Hotel, which opened in 1917. And the funny story with that one is while they were building the hotel, there was people protesting, workers protesting outside. They called for a strike, and they passed out cards that said, "Don't patronize this restaurant. His hotel is being built with his hotel is being hotel is being built unfair to labor. And he would collect the boxes, collect those cards and give people discounts with them. And then he would collect the cards and give them back to the workers that were striking and tell them to keep passing them out because it was getting him more business. So they opened the Jacomar Tea Room in the Hume Hotel in 1917, and it was named for their 3 children, Jack, Catherine, and Marjorie Jacomar. So that was that restaurant there. So then that place has a long history of having places there. And I had always thought that the Ruby Tuesday that I heard about was the Ruby Tuesday that I know as a chain restaurant, but it was apparently not. It was a nightclub. So, but I found this ad from the 70s that talks about food. So they must have served food at some point. But the people I talked to that remember it from the 80s and 90s said they do not remember it being a place that had food. So I don't know.
Well,
if
they
you guys-
also had pool tables and Pac-Man and all kinds of games. We'd go up there after work on Fridays from Kissel. So that
Sounds
would
like
have
a lot of
been
fun.
the 80s. It was really good.
But you don't remember it being a restaurant?
I think
Really?
there was a restaurant
Yes.
part on the
Okay.
front side of it, and then the other area was downstairs and in the back part of it.
So it was that until about the mid 90s. And then I think it was just sat vacant for a little while. And then in 99, Buffalo Wild Wings opened there, which is what was there when we moved to town. Because that was another place that my husband and I would meet for lunch to go to Buffalo Wild Wings a lot. Another dangerous place probably to have close to eat at all the time, but it was good. And then they opened, they closed their location downtown in 2012, and then they opened a new location on Bechtel that's still there. And then Infusions was a short-lived little place that was in that same location after Buffalo Wild Wings closed down. And I only remember it because they gave us a menu that I immediately put in the archives. And I don't think I ever even got a chance to eat there. It wasn't open for too long. And then until recently it was Fratelli's, which was the Catanzaro's owned Italian restaurant on that side. And just this week it reopened. They had their soft opening, and it's Viva La Fiesta, which is a Mexican place. And I think my husband actually went there for lunch today. He said it was pretty good. So I'm sure that'll be another place we'll end up frequenting because it's a good place for me to walk down to and meet for lunch. So I like that there's lots of places downtown that we can go to. Another hotel place that was when they first opened, the Shawnee also opened in 1917, the same time as the Hume Hotel. So this is down on the other corner down there at Limestone and Maine. But they had a fancy restaurant. This is a picture of it in 1939. So the days of the fancy hotel restaurants have gone away. You guys remember the original Burger King?
Yes.
It's over by Springfield High School in that little stretch in the middle there on Limestone.
He's the little guy that beat the big guys.
Yes. So yeah, Thomas Endicott opened it in 1960, called the Burger King. And by 1971, he was fighting with Burger King, who wanted to bring their restaurant to town. So they came in the early 70s, but since he owned the name Burger King, they couldn't bring it as Burger King. So this is an ad from 1975 showing that it was the home of the Whopper. They couldn't call themselves Burger King. So apparently, as the home of the Whopper, they did not do very well. So they ended up leaving town. And then finally in 1985, he relented and let them buy the name. And they came to town where they now have at least 3 locations. So here's your, I don't have a picture of it as Giannis's, Bob, but, and I don't have an old picture of Casey's either. All we have is this 1987 booklet for Casey's. And then one of the pictures from 2012 when it was closing.
Fine place to eat.
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounded like a fancy place. And it was one that we lived here. I could have gone there, but it sounded too fancy for me. It was one that I didn't think we could afford to go to. So we never went there. So I'm kind of sad that we didn't. We have a Yanisse's up in the Akron area. So it's not a chain. It's just a family last name, I think, which is the only reason I know how to pronounce it because we had one up by us too. Unless it is a chain. I don't think it is though, because it sounded like it was family owned. And I think that's what ours is up in the Akron area too. Just so happens to be two Yanisse's.
They probably pronounce it Yanucci.
Mhm.
Well, they pronounced it Yanisse's up there.
Really?
Which is because normally everyone corrects me down here because you guys all say everything wrong in Southwest Ohio. But that was one that I had it right also because that's how we pronounce it up there.
Well, it was Yanisse's, Dave and Steve Yanissy.
Yeah, okay, so family owned. And they had it for a long time. But yeah, we don't have any pictures of it as we've got ads because we have the papers and stuff, but we don't have any pictures of it either of the restaurants in the earlier time. This is a very early one. It was in the 19 teens through the 1930s. It was the Crystal Restaurant down on High Street. And it's it later became an ice cream counter. And then this was another Greek owned one. It was owned by Gus Mantis and Nick and Gus Panos were cousins that owned it. And they later moved to the Bookwalter building. So we don't have any pictures of it, but we have the next best thing to me. I spend a lot of time in the model that we have down in the museum that is built of downtown Springfield from the 40s and 50s. And I always go down there to try and orient myself to where things were located. So the Crystal restaurant was located down on the corner from Woolworths at one point. And it does actually show on our model down there.
Yanisse's restaurant actually started out as Steve's Hamburger.
Oh,
At
in that same location?
1725 West Main.
Huh, so that was a less fancy
well,
sounding place.
And Dave Yanissy at the time was selling clothing at, I believe, Charters and Patterson, I think. And he got out of that business and joined his brother. And that's when they opened the bigger restaurant at 1725.
Oh, okay, so not the same location. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I'd throw in a slide for what's in our own building. We've always had a restaurant since we opened as the Heritage Center. There's always been something down on the first floor. It was Java House originally, which we opened in 2001 through 2008. And then Java House does the catering out at the Meadows now, which is another great restaurant. I'm pointing the right direction. This way, down this way, east, way east. Before you get to 70 out on 40. I have to forget where I am in the building right now. And then it later became Central Perk for a couple of years. And they had pizza. And I was trying to explain this to people here. I said, yeah, they had a pizza that for a very short time. And then all I remember is Inmundo moved in. And I realized Inmundo's been there for almost 15 years now. So I got to make sure Duke knows that they're coming up on a 15th anniversary down there. But Inmundo's down there and they've got great sandwiches and soup and bagels and coffee and everything. So what's in our place? Derr Road Inn. That's one that I know a lot of people remember. We have a couple of copies of their one of their old menus in the collection. The original house there was built in the 1840s on Derr Road, and it opened as a restaurant in 1957. And people talk to me about that you could feed deer there on the property.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
In the backyard.
So did they have they were caged in deer that just
Yep.
lived there, or
They just wandered on the property.
they wandered? Okay. That's pretty cool. I know that when so the fire here it didn't end with a fire. they allowed the Moorfield Township Fire Department to use it for training. And that was, and rather than demo, that was an option that gave them, training that they needed. And that building was gone after that. So that was in 2006 that they did that. Suspense Dairy Corner. They opened in 1972, and I remember I thought it was just a couple of years ago, but they opened that big place at the Shrine and what is that, 41?
Yeah.
Up there, and more than 10 years ago now. That's a much bigger location. Good place for ice cream. This is one that all we have is the outside cover of the menu, but it had advertising on it. So this kind of helped me figure out the date somewhat, because it talks about the in the top right corner, it has Black's Opera House on Main Street, and Black's Opera House burned in 1902. So this is definitely before that. And some of the things on here, like White Star Laundry, I know that was gone by like the 19-teens. So, I mean, this is probably like 1890s maybe. So I would need to do a bit more research on when these different places existed. But like Spangenberg is around since the 1870s. I know that. So this could be a much older one. And see if we can find more information about this. This is one that was short-lived in that it's one location, but it's now if Speedy Gonzalez Mexican restaurant moved into the old what was it?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
KFC, yeah. On
Popeyes before that.
I think I only went there once when it was at that location as Speedy Gonzalez, but we like to go to the one now on Main Street. It's good. And they have a donut place apparently going in there because the signage is up, but they just haven't opened yet officially. So make sure you check it out when it opens up, but they have the menu posted online for that place. Another longtime place that I didn't realize had been around that long is Big Boy Frisch's, which up in Northeast Ohio, it's not owned by Frisch's. It's just called Big Boy up there. So Frisch's is just this area thing, which I didn't realize until we moved down here, but it was originally a Country Kitchen, and then Country Kitchen was bought out by Frisch's in 1956. And I'm not sure when the Bechtel one was opened, but it was in the 2000s, I think. This is Simon Kenton Inn. Another
one on East Main probably opened 1948 or 49.
Oh, you remember it even earlier than that? Okay, because it might have been under the different. Because a Country Kitchen was earlier too, but I think the name change to Big Boy was in the 50s.
They had that one, and then across the street was the Top Hat.
That's where the Top Hat was. I've heard people talk about that one.
Same side of the street, same side of Main Street. Then 2 buildings away across the street.
Okay. And was that another drive-through kind of place?
Yes. Well, you could eat inside too.
Okay.
But Dick McKinney owned Top Hat.
And didn't the high school kids circle around there and around and around and
And
around?
Dick would get upset because the kids that had cars in high school would circle through the Top Hat and then go over to Frisch's, circle Frisch's, and then come back to the Top Hat. And he used to get really upset over that.
I've heard Dick Hatfield tell some stories about cruising
around. Oh yeah, Dick would be one of them.
Yeah, he would be.
Yeah, I used to do that.
You too, Larry?
Yeah.
We got the Simon Kenton Inn. We just wrote about this one recently because we had a great painting of the building. We've got an older picture of the original home out there, but that's out on 68. And that opened as a restaurant and event center in 2005. So it's a nice fancy place. Got a good menu out there. Another one that a lot of people know and love is the Hickory Inn. It opened in 1947 as a drive-in and became Hickory Inn name in 1978. But this picture is from about 1947, so it really hasn't changed much at all.
Curly Macbeth was the owner, and boy, Hey, when the high school kids come in there, he was like, he ruled with an iron hand. He put up with nothing.
Well, that's another good long time place that's got good pizza and steaks and everything. This is now Station 1, but it is originally Whole Dobbs, which
That's old Pop and Whitey Bazell too.
okay, same owners. Okay.
Yes.
It
So
was
yeah, the
electric,
Tuttle House. So it says the Whole Dobbs sold to the Tuttle House in
it was electric
1955.
pizza for a while.
Which one? What was it?
Electric pizza, because you would number would
Um,
go up on the board and you'd go around the back and drive through and pick up your pizzas.
Wasn't electric pizza across from Hickory up on College?
No, it eventually they closed. I think they closed Electric Pizza,
Okay.
but at Hickory Inn was always, well, Williamson was the one that ran it. I don't know whether they took their menus, but that's where the pizzas came from.
Yeah, that's what the Williamsons owned Hickory and they had electric pizza is what I had going back to that slide. I had a little note about that.
Yeah.
This one became Station 1, or the current Station 1 has been Station 1 since 1993. And Dan Hurley, who runs the Springfield Historical Society now, he was the owner of the of Station 1 originally. And it was a couple other things. It was Diane's Pizza drive-through from 1970 through the mid 80s, and then it became Pizza Plus until it became Station 1. Stocksdale's is another one that I hear people talk about. I had been to Joe's Grill. I did not realize until I was doing this research that they were the same building. Over on basically next to the Speedway now.
Mhm.
Right. Mhm.
So.
I
but
never saw Stocksdale's look like that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I
You
don't
didn't see it
recognize
look like that?
either.
Oh, well, this is the grand opening in 1952. So maybe
Yeah.
it looked a lot different later. I don't know. This
Yeah,
is
they
from the
must-
paper.
Yeah,
There.
I don't remember it looking like that either.
And I honestly can't remember what Joe's looked like. I know we went there a couple of times, but I can't picture it. And the only thing I could find was a demolition picture, and it's also already mostly gone by the
Well, they had
in the
an
demo.
outdoor eating area out front. There
It's
towards the end.
Stocksdale's they did?
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, they had glass all the way around.
right.
Like you could see into it?
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Well, yeah, this picture from, I didn't look, I know we don't have any more pictures in the archives, but there might be more stuff in the paper about that one. And from what I can understand, the stock barn was right next door.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Across
Well,
the parking lot.
But
not
you said it was
exactly right next door, but
it was the same owners, the Youngs, that owned that as well. Well, except Stocksdale's was owned by a Stockdale first,
Yeah.
and then he sold it to the Youngs. But the Red Barn was a chain. And it's where the Speedway is today. Red Barn was a chain I don't think they had up in Northeast Ohio because that's not one that I've heard of, but I heard a lot of people talk about it down here. This is another one, the Rustic Inn. This is out by the Sonic Home.
It's where the
Okay.
68 bypasses.
Yeah.
And we donated a wood fork and spoon that they gave out as a welcoming gift or something.
Oh, cool. They opened in 48 out there. And then they were there till 64. But this is a picture from the paper that I've never seen, and we don't have an actual picture of it that I've seen. This is another one. Macora's was in that 1987 booklet, and I didn't know that O'Connor's because I remember O'Connor's when it was on Northmore. I didn't know that it was in the old Macora's, which was an Italian restaurant. So O'Connor's opened there in 2008, and then they built their place that they have now up on North Limestone, which we frequent a lot because they have trivia on Monday nights. So if you like trivia, 7 o'clock on Monday nights, it's a good place to be. And they have good food there. So
Original McCord.
you can come try and beat us.
the original McCoy's building on Northmore was a men's clothing store.
Oh, okay.
And
I
then
don't know.
when that went out of business, that's when McCoy's bar went in there. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if that building still stands over there. I meant to look that up to see if it's on Google Maps or drive by it, but yeah, I
I
forgot.
think it is there.
Still there.
Yeah. But I don't know what's in it right now.
You spoke about the Rustic Inn.
Yeah.
I can't think of the people that own it. It's a husband and wife. And when they closed that, then they purchased the Red Brick Tavern over in Lafayette,
Oh, okay.
famous for their little sweet rolls.
Well, this
Mhm.
one mentions, yeah, cinnamon rolls was what they were known for there. And they also had cabins that they rented over in that area
Yes.
too.
In back of there.
Okay. We had a menu for Leanne's Dairy Delight. I don't think that this is not the current menu, but this is an older one. It didn't have a date on it, but they opened in 2004. And they're
That's it.
that place where they're at has a bit of history. The old what's it called? The bicentennial cabin that was built in 1901, that was the replica of James DeMint's cabin, was moved across the street from the other side of the bridge from where Leanne's Dairy Delight was, and it burned in like the 90s, I think.
Mhm.
But the foundations of that cabin are still over there, somewhere in the woods. You probably should not walk over there, but I know that's where it is. But Leanne's is a good drive-through place that you can get. They have daily specials. And
George and Teets McCoy were the owners of the Rustic Inn.
okay, the McCoys.
Yes. And when they closed, they used to have, if you've ever, the people that have been out there, they had this huge painting, oil painting of a lighthouse and the lake area and so forth. And I told him when they closed, I said, George, I'd like to have that. And he reaches under the counter and he gets this yellow tablet and he says, I'll put you on the list. You're number 40.
Oh, gee. I wonder who got that.
I don't know.
Not you.
So
That's funny.
Mhm.
So Linardo's, that's another major long-term one, opened in oh, I can't remember. I had it written down, but it was a long time ago. It used to be Ungerleiters before that.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think it was also, I think, Shartz's at one time.
Charts, that's right. Clock Cafe. We have a
Yes.
menu for that one.
Well, there was another Shartz Clock Cafe out on West Main.
Oh, okay. I
Right.
think it became a Leonardo's maybe in the 70s. I don't know. I swear I put it on this slide, but I guess I didn't update this one. But they have good Greek food and stuff. Feels like stepping into a time machine when you go in there. It's kind of cool. So Mike and Rosie's opened in 77, and they just came under new management in this last year. And I have a slide about them later, but the Clark County Food Fiends have a takeover there at the end of the month where there'll be people that are members of that Facebook group can go meet up with each other, and there'll be special deals for them. And Mike and Rosie's, which is a long time favorite. Another long time favorite that's gone because of a fire. Like I mentioned in other ones is the mill. It opened as a tavern in 1933 and then opened as the mill in the early 1960s. And how do you say the owner's name, Bob?
Ioni.
Ioni. A lot of people talked about Sam Ioni and his family running that place, and a lot of the food that it was known for is what they brought to the place. A lot of people went there for their birthdays and anniversaries and dinners, and they had rehearsal dinners and luncheons and
Parties.
all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Fried skillet potatoes, everyone talked about. I know what those were. That sound really good. But they burned in November 1998, had a bad fire there.
The thing I remember about it, if you were, I know, I don't think you were ever in it, Natalie, but they had it upstairs like a balcony,
Mm-hmm.
and they served up there. And those waitresses that had to come out of the kitchen carrying a tray, walk up about 30 steps to that balcony to serve food. That was terrible.
Uh,
They did the same thing in Yellow Springs at that restaurant downtown, up the balcony, upstairs. Yeah.
This is one that we had on Facebook a short while back as a where is it? It was originally Remetter's Cafe, which is now where the parking lot for Tuttle Brothers is. Is where it used to stand in this
47.
here.
Oh,
But it opened in it was remodeled in 47, and opened with that storefront that you see there. So this is a great big picture about the newly remodeled, but it had originally been owned by Gustav Harm in the I can't remember what year, early 1930s, and then Remetter took over in 35, and then they remodeled it in 47. And then it later became the Seven Seas Cafe, which I had found an article about people from the New Sun. That was one of their favorite places to go hang out. And Bessie and Nick Stathopoulos owned it later when it was the Seven Seas. And it was known for its burgers then. But it closed in 71.
Okay, next.
And that was another early Greek immigrant family, but they came a little bit later. They came in the 50s, not long before they opened the restaurant.
Next.
How about the Ridgewood Cafe? That's a current one that's a great place. This is when they were remodeling a few years ago. And it was originally Southern Pines, opened in the 80s at that place. And I found, when I was looking it up, I found a lot of articles about people didn't like it opening up so close to Snow Hill School, that they didn't like having a place that served alcohol so close to a school, and they worried about that. So there was a lot of protests about that the first few years. And then it eventually opened as Ridgewood, I think maybe sometime in the 90s, and has been that ever since. They have really great burgers.
Natalie, it's interesting that the number of restaurants in Springfield were originally gas stations. And you already mentioned O'Brien's, White Gables, which my dad bought that gas station that was right behind what became Huntington Bank. And so he converted that gas station into White Gables Drive in the 1950s. And then this was Carl Dean. Carl Dean worked at that gas station.
Yeah. I remember seeing that. Yeah, this one was a gas station too.
Yeah.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Wasn't the first Ridgewood across from Roosevelt School on North Limestone?
The first what?
Ridgewood Grille.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know. It was the same family. That's what I was asking.
Oh, I'm not sure. All I found when I did
either.
searches for Ridgewood, I was searching for this address. So it's possible that if it was in another address, I didn't pick up the name. When I was looking for more stuff on this restaurant, I just looked up the address.
Wasn't it called Ridgewood Grille?
You guys remember Silhouette? I didn't want to leave this one out because it was the Downings restaurant, and they were long-time volunteers of ours. Donna and Warren ran the Silhouette. And it closed in 1990, but it was open for 27 years over in Park Shopping Center. And I know Donna was like, she would make cookies for our night at the museum, and her daughter's taken over making cookies for us for events. And she used to make all the pies there at the Silhouette. So, but this is a picture of her there right before they closed down, and around Easter in 1990. But we had this article in the menu in our collection. I'll have to let her daughter, Kathy, works at the desk on Thursdays. I'll have to let her know that we had got this She probably is the one who gave it to us.
Hmm.
You guys remember Jim's
Mhm,
downtown?
definitely.
From what I've heard about him, sounds like he's kind of like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. You had to know exactly what you were going to order when you stepped up to order, or you'd get yelled at.
Mhm,
Sounded like he was a bit crazy.
Somebody else remembers that, huh?
I do too.
Well,
And he
Joe-
never
Joe
wrote
Long-
anything down. He remembered it all.
That's right.
There was a place called Longo, Joe Longo's, and Joe was like that too. Out on the
Oh,
west
that was
end.
the, have you remembered to eat place down on
Oh,
Main?
yeah, uh-huh.
So that's where I think the Family Dollar is now, down there, was where Longo's was. Oh, I forgot. I do have a picture of Longo's. I could have included that one. I don't have a slide for Longo's though. But yeah, Jim's, we've got a couple of the menus. We don't have any pictures of it it was right by the Regent Theater, but if you go down to the model, down to the finest section on the Regent, Jim's is written in there on the windows though, so it's represented down in the model.
He was famous for his olive sandwiches.
Which I'm coming to that. I know that they had, it's not on the menu here, but Fountain on Main, it was down on Main Street for a while. They just closed last year. I think they were there from the early 2000s. And they were a great little place downtown. But they had apparently the same olive spread. I tried it one time when Ruth Stiles made it here on a Wednesday for some of the other volunteers, and very, very salty. But John and I made it a couple of years ago when we were trying old recipes from cookbooks in our archives. We decided to try and make Jim's olive spread, and it was very, very salty. So I'm not sure if I would have loved the olive spread. Maybe we made it wrong. But yeah, this is the menu from Fountain on Main, which there's not anything currently open in that spot, but I think they've been working on something for a while for there to be another restaurant opening up over there in
I
Bushnell.
thought they said it was Casa del Sabor's opening a Mexican restaurant down there.
Oh, that's right. I haven't heard any updates on that, but we'll have to keep an eye out then. I did remember they said that was going to be a Mexican restaurant. It was the bullpen for a little bit, like after it was Fountain.
Yeah.
So it's been a few things over there. Oh, I think I had to take it out because I ran out of space or time, but I had a slide for the stuff that used to be in the old Fairbanks building or First National Bank. There was a couple of different mobile dogs was over there and a couple of different restaurants that are all gone now because the building is closed down to everybody. But they had, always there was a restaurant on the first floor over there too. I wanted to mention these because did you guys know that we're a test market for restaurants? So if there's something that they want to test, like a new restaurant concept
Star Chili.
or different foods at a restaurant, we are the Springfield area is the test market for that. So we had a Gold Star Grill in the early 2000s. I do remember going there on Bechtel. That didn't last for too long. And then the White Castle had a Laughing Noodle. It was White Castle / Laughing Noodle. The Laughing Noodle went away, and then the White Castle had a fire like last year, so it's still there but not open anymore. But yeah, like if they want to test new foods at like Taco Bell or McDonald's, we are the test market for restaurants like that to test out different foods and see if they go well. So good reason to try those weird things, because if we may be the reason they decide to keep things or not keep them. You guys remember Maddie Guthrie's?
Mm-hmm.
I know it had a couple of locations, but we have got pictures here showing when it was in the old marketplace, Myers Market, now Cohatch. But it later moved across the street and was in the arcade.
What?
They had a lunch counter in the Myers Market when it first opened in 1917.
Yes.
And they were there until
they were in the arcade.
70s, I think, and then they moved to the arcade in the 70s. And I think they were there until the arcade was torn down. And then they moved into the Shawnee Hotel for a while. And then they closed in 2006 over at the Shawnee. So,
Have you overlooked the Dad's Hamburger?
I think I might have had to take that slide out. Was that the Spiros one family?
No, I
not
forget
that
the
one?
guy's name. That was probably the most famous
What
restaurant
was
in
that at, Bob?
Springfield.
Do you remember where Dad's Hamburger was?
Oh yeah, it's right corner of Isabel and West Main.
Okay, so down on
Right across the street from the Pennsylvania House.
okay. I do think I did have a slide for that, but I was over 100 slides when I went into today, and I got it down to like 60. So I had to take a whole bunch out. Like I said, there was way more restaurants than I realized, and I bit off more than I can chew, which is
Are we going to have part 2?
funny. Maybe. I mean, we probably could do more, but there was just a few. There were some that got taken out. So Dad's, I did end up taking out. So thank you for mentioning it, though, Bob.
My dad used to say, if you start at Yellow Spring Street and go west on Main Street, it was either a bar, a restaurant, or a bakery. That's all was out there.
I've seen online people try and name all the bars going through town too. I know at Champion City Guide and Supply, they have a t-shirt that just has bar names on it that you can buy. So for the people that like frequent all the bars, they have a shirt for you. I think they said they were working on a restaurant one. I'll have to ask them about that. But this is a great picture of currently Cohatch. This is around 1917 when it first opened, showing everything that used to be in there. And this is it now. It's got, multiple restaurants over there. I think this is an older picture, not representing all the restaurants that are currently there. Like Cheetos Tacos is now over where Painted Pepper is, and Painted Pepper has gone back to their food truck model. But they've got like a sushi place and a waffle place and a pizza place and a sandwich place and New Orleans Grille place back in there. So it's nice to have next to us that we can go run over there for food if we need to. But that's a good kind of food court style place to go. Bring people. This is one that I found that apparently a researcher ran across this picture and printed it to put in because it was a lunch cart. So a food truck. Because now food trucks is the future of most things. There's food trucks everywhere, traveling all over. So I thought I'd share this food truck here from the early 1900s. They were around before World War I. So this was them down by the original fountain downtown. You can see on the Esplanade, you see the big fountain behind them. They had the owl lunch cart that people would go to.
That's a good picture of the arcade in the back.
Yeah.
In the back.
This is from the 30s paper. So I don't know the date of the actual picture, but they said it was before World War II or before World War I.
Before my time.
Yeah. Before any of our times. This is so I thought this is where I don't know how to keep track of what's going on now food wise as far as like physical evidence for us to have in the archives, because a lot of this stuff I had because we had something to scan in the archives. But with food trucks, it's a lot more ephemeral. They make up their menus and they write them up that day, or they post it on Facebook, or they have it on, they have the food truck finder where you can use the app to find out where different food trucks are. But they have things like if you guys went to the Rotary food truck thing a couple weeks ago, we ran down there to get a couple of things. I saw there was a Greek salmon gyro that I decided I really had to have. So I went down there to get that a couple weeks ago, but I was overwhelming amount of food trucks to choose from and lots of lines. So I just went for the thing that I went down to get. And we didn't stick around for too long, but it's been going on for 10 years now, and we go most of the time when they have it. And there's always lots of people down there. So I don't know how to collect the history of food trucks in our area, but I know there's lots of them. Other places that you can find them are there's different food truck rallies all over the place. Mother Stewart's, like it's great for places that don't have a kitchen, like Mother Stewart's. They've got the brewery and everything and different drink options and stuff, but the food options are always ever changing with whatever can be out there. So they're always advertising what trucks are coming, and you can decide which ones you want to go wait in line for and all of that. So that's another new option that's popped up more in the last 10 years or so, but it's hard to document for the future for people to look back on. So if you guys have any ephemera related to food trucks or anything like that, that's something I might start collecting to if we can find that kind of stuff. But most of the stuff's online. So again, that's a difficult one. I don't know if any of you guys are members of Clark County Food Fiends if you're on Facebook, but if you want to find out about the local food scene now, they now have a website, Clark County. I meant to write it. Something, if you just Google Clark County Food Fiends, you can find the website too, but the Facebook group has thousands of members. And I use it now if I'm going to any restaurant to find out what anyone has said about the restaurant. And you're supposed to, it's a place to talk good about restaurants. You're not going to find bad food reviews or anything, but you'll see pictures of, oh, I had this great thing at 571 Grille in New Carlisle, or I had this great thing at this food truck, or they'll tell you, hey, this food truck is here today. I got this. And, people can go, it's a good place to build up the food. So this is, if you want to know about what's available now in Springfield and Clark County Food Fiends is awesome site for that. It's run by Ryan Ray, who works for the Salvation Army, but it's a great place to build up support for local places like that. They have merch too. I have a Food Fiends t-shirt myself that I got. We're selling it down at the Champion City Pops, which is already closed, which is a little ice cream place that was down by Charlo's, closed last month. But they were selling those t-shirts for a while. But that's a good place to check out the food scene.
Maybe as a fundraiser, Natalie, the Heritage Center could get Schmidt's Sausage House to come over. They're a big draw.
They are. There's a lot of food trucks that are good draws though. Schmidt's they were at the food truck rally too. But yeah, there's a lot. There's so many options out there for food. It's overwhelming, which is why I realized, I can't even attempt to cover this all. So that's all I have as far as food slides go. I just wanted to make sure that I told you guys some other things that are coming up with us. This Saturday, if you guys are familiar with Walter Stitt, he served with Sherman's Tank Corps in World War II, and he wrote a book called Surviving Three Shermans, What I Didn't Tell My Mother About the War, and his mother kept all of the letters that he sent home during the war, and he has them superimposed, up against what was actually going on. So, he has the rosy letters that he sent to his mom so she wouldn't worry about him. And then he talks about what was really going on during those times. And we interviewed him a few years ago, and we did a program where we shared bits of his interview as a virtual program. So he's a great storyteller. He's going to speak for a little bit, and then he's going to sign the book. So that'll be this Saturday at 1:00. If you guys want to come to that, it's free. It'll be down in Crable Discovery Hall on the first floor. So if you want to come check that out. We also have a behind the scenes tour of the collections areas that we're doing on Wednesday, September 11th from 2 to 4. So you'll get to meet all of our collection staff and see the areas where we work, see some artifacts, see things in the archives, and we'll share some stories with you. So that'll be a good opportunity behind the scenes. Also coming up next month, we have our first speaker series of the fall, one of Donna's programs. This is about the life of John Moret. He is a Bataan Death March survivor. And we had an interview that we had done with him in the early 2000s. He passed away in 2011, but we never really did anything with the interview that we have in our collection. So this program is sharing snippets from his story that he shares in his own words, along with his daughter is traveling in, who doesn't live in Springfield anymore, but she's coming in to kind of share his story along with some of her own memories and stories about her father. And there'll be other family members and people here that can share, or other people that may have known him. So that should be a really interesting program coming up on September 12th. And then at the end of the month, we have a new event that we are doing. We just officially announced it today. Night at the Heritage Center. It is, if you've ever been to our Night at the Museum, this is a a different kind of spooky version of that. We'll be sharing strange and unusual stories from Springfield's history with characters stationed throughout the museum. So like Night at the Museum, people book a tour time and you can come through and you meet the characters and things like that. So it'll be, tour times will be booked between 6 and 8 o'clock. We have member pricing and non-member pricing and kids pricing, but we don't recommend young kids come to this one because we are hoping to make it spooky, but not too scary. But it'll be being able to share some interesting different kinds of stories that we have here. So that'll be on September 28th. And that's all I have. If you guys think of anything, if you have anything that you say, oh, I should maybe see if they want that at the Heritage Center, my email is on here, and we'd love to talk to you about stuff that you have so that we can share more of these stories. You guys have any questions or anything that you want to add?
Very good. Thanks,
Yeah,
Natalie.
very good. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Natalie.
Natalie.
This is a good look back at these restaurants.
Yeah, there's so many.
And I think
Thank
what's
you,
really,
Natalie.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for
Good
sharing.
job.
And I don't have September's virtual program topic figured out. So if you have any ideas, Patty, give me another idea. I'll take it. We might have a special guest for September, so we'll let you know. I know that we have a special guest for October, Chris Woodyard, the author of the Haunted Ohio books. And she does some Victorian ghost storybooks and hauntings.
Yes.
She's going to do a virtual program for us on October 23rd. So I know I have October set, but I'll let you guys know what we're going to do for September when we get that figured out. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks, Natalie.
Have a good night.
thank you, Natalie.
Good to see you, Larry.